am your moderator. I will let the panel introduce themselves. They can do a way better job than I can. And then we're going to have a quick case study with a few slides, and then we'll get into questions.
Hi, my name is Kaya Fox. I'm the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity in the Greater Wisconsin. So I'll start off with a case study that is taking place right here in the city of Hillsborough. How many people are planning on going to the tour at the end of the day? Raise your hand. You guys love single-family affordable housing here. So I stopped by the houses on my way here this morning, and I am well aware of the quality and what factory-built housing looks like, and I was literally blown away by these homes. So exceeded my expectations of what these homes are going to look like, and I just want to put this into perspective. So we started at the beginning of April working with Corey to order 4 homes. We started excavation of foundations, and the homes were all placed on foundations last week. So before the end of May, so basically in a 4-week time period, we ordered homes, got them done, got them delivered, got them set on foundations that were dug as soon as the ground levels. So when you talk about a solution that gets you affordable housing at a pace in which we are looking at in regards to the housing crisis, this is one of the solutions. So we're going to do a little bit deeper dive into the project that we have here in Hillsborough, just to give you an idea of kind of what that overarching discussion that we're going to be having today in regards to how do different entities work together to bring affordable housing to a community. So, next slide. This is going to set the stage. And I love Charlotte because she spews data, and I love data. And so a lot of times people like take the slides out kind of really, but I've kept the most important ones in here. And I think we all know this, but I just love to show it because it is a stark reminder of kind of why we are where we're at in regards to housing in our communities. And so, especially over the last few years, we have seen an exponential rise in the cost of housing in communities all across the United States. Rural, urban, city centers, it's the same issue. And then our wages have been either stagnant or declining as a base of comparison to housing rates. But the one that I really want to point out is that when we talk about housing going up, it's the affordable housing units that have risen exponentially in comparison to all other types of housing being developed. And so this gap that you see here, with a little pointer finger, shows that the cost of affordable housing has actually risen faster than any other type of housing out there. So that's a double whammy for our working residents, for workforce housing, for attainable housing, for starter homes. Families that want to move into homeownership are finding it harder and harder to, because out of all the homes out there, those starter level homes, entry level homes, have risen exponentially faster than any other type of housing out there. So when you think about what you need to bring to the table in order to create affordable housing, understand that that gap is greater than any other type of housing there, and you're going to need to find those partnerships. Next slide. So for every $1,000 that we see as an increase in housing prices, it bumps almost 2,000 people out of the housing market. They just cannot afford housing anymore. It does not meet the income strategy we have when we look at affordability. So let that sink in. Houses have increased, in some instances, almost double. And so how many people over the last few years, have we literally just wiped out of the opportunity to afford housing? And then I think this is another really stark one. This is true across the United States, that the type of homes that are being sold and produced in the United States are no longer affordable homes. The vast majority of homes that are taking up the market are those higher priced homes that people just cannot afford. So we are, everything that we are doing, pricing a vast majority of people in the housing market out of the opportunity of homeownership. So, at the end of 2023, the city of Hillsborough actually had done kind of a study on what the housing needs in the community were. They realized, just like a lot of other rural communities, that they did not have the housing that they needed. We had St. Joseph Hospital that was built in this community, and they were having a hard time finding employees, keeping employees, and that was, when you have have to travel. You know, Charlotte talked about how many minutes people have to commute. If you can't find housing in your community and you can find something that's closer, you're not going to stick around. And so they knew, just like everybody else has known, that there was a need for affordable housing in their community. So they actually put out a request for proposal, specifically looking for 10 units of developed affordable housing in the city of Hillsborough. They called it out. They literally used the word affordable housing, which I think a lot of you, we say that word and people have some kind of rejections to it. So a lot of times, developers like Habitat for Humanity use words like workforce housing, attainable housing, starter homes, but it's the same thing. It's housing that's literally affordable to the people who work in your community. And so using the word affordable housing sometimes can put hackles up, but it's literally what we're doing. We are creating housing that people can actually afford. And I think those slides really highlighted that affordable housing is not affordable for a huge swath of the population that inhabits our communities. So they had a TID. The city of Hillsborough actually used the TID district, and they also are using TIF funds to help fund the project that we're doing in Hillsborough. So first, we were able to get the lots for free. The city was selling the lots for $4,000 because they wanted to encourage development, and even at $4,000, you know, the lot is, you know, the price of the lot does not negate all of the other issues that come with housing development. So making the lots for free, it was even difficult to think about how can we make an affordable development in our community. And then we're also getting $10,000 per home for every home that gets completed. So 10 homes, $10,000, that's $100,000 in TIF funding by the time we get done with this project. Just to let you know, this is a $3.2 million project. And so they had a burst of housing development prior to the pandemic that literally just dropped off. And so they had all of these lots, they used TIF funds to do the improvements on them, and nobody was buying and developing houses. And so, you know, it did, you want there to be taxes coming in, and when no development was happening, that was a big issue for that TID. And so they created the request for proposal. Habitat for Humanity responded to it in the spring of 2024. Next slide. And this is getting to kind of what Charlotte was talking about, that data. You know, this is the stuff that the city was looking at. And I wanted to point out a couple of the things. Charlotte went through some of the things, but if you want to take a look at the median household income in 2010 was $42,000. By 2020, 10 years later, it's $58,000. But if you look at the home values, like that's a pretty drastic income increase that is really not keeping track with the income increase. And I think every community can look at the same exact numbers and see similar results. Next. So, Habitat's proposal is that we are going to do 10 homes total. They are single-family homes in Tinkers Bluff Addition here in Hillsborough. 3 of them are going to be traditional Habitat homes, so under 60% of the area median income. 3 of them are going to be first-time homeowners, and they're going to be under 80% of the area median income. And then 4 of them are market rate homes. And so there is income limit to them, but they are much higher, allowing for mixed income housing to meet the needs of the community and the people who live here. The market rate homes are going to be built first, so those are the houses we're going to go through. And those are the homes that are going to basically fund the rest of this project. So by selling on the open market, Habitat has the funds to then invest in the remaining 6 homes that we're developing. We are also getting some children funds from the state of Wisconsin. We've had a $1 million loan through Habitat for Humanity International that is also funding this project. And then we have support from FullyCap, one of our other developer partners in this community, to provide some down payment assistance to help with the affordability for the homeowners that are going to be purchasing these homes. Next slide. So we are using crossmod homes from Schultz Homes out of Redwood Falls, Minnesota. These are a new type of factory-built housing design. They are 3 to 4 bedroom homes, 2 baths. They have an attached 2-car garage, a front porch. All the homes have full basements, more energy efficient than the average stick-up home. We actually received funding from the Public Service Commission to put full solar arrays with battery backups on the homes, and then the pre-construction appraisals came in. And so with this crossmod, you can have homes that literally fit into the communities in which they're being placed. A lot of times when people think about factory-built homes, they're thinking rectangles that have no curb appeal. These are built to have have that curb appeal for that neighborhood feel. And so you've got drywall throughout, you've got the porches, the garages, permanent foundations, the energy efficient upgrades, like all the things that our buyers are looking for in the houses that they want to purchase, but they're at a price point that is affordable for families. Next. So this is what we're going to be looking at with Habitat for Humanity. If those of you who don't know, we work with our homeowners, they provide sweat equity, and we are looking for the people in our communities that are in the greatest need of affordable housing. And so we just completed our application process, and we'll have the first 3 Habitat homeowners for Hillsborough to be announced by the first part of June. So Habitat creates mortgage packages for all of our homeowners. So whether they're the 120, the 80, or the 60%, we can use a variety of different opportunities to get families into homes at an affordable price. So I think you saw the appraised values at $350. You're like, how's that affordable for families? Well, that's why as a nonprofit developer, we have those things that we can bring to the table. So Habitat can subsidize interest rates to as low as 0%. In rural communities like Hillsborough, we can use rural development funding. We have down payment assistance either between Habitat or with our CAP partnership to again help lower that first mortgage. And because we're Habitat for Humanity, we can also adjust the purchase price because we are also the developers. So what we are selling the houses for can be something that we can work with in order to kind of layer funding at a variety of different levels to make these homes affordable to the families in Hillsborough. And that's something that as a nonprofit, that's something that we can bring to the table. So again, one of the things that you can do, Charlotte was talking about, let data guide your decisions, not the markets. The markets have been telling people what to be building over the last few years, and they've been building $500,000 homes that people can't afford. Be specific on what you're asking for. If you want affordable housing, ask for affordable housing. Find your partners, find the funding. TIP is an excellent opportunity for municipalities. Make it easy, and really at the end of the day, it has to be affordable. It can't be something where we're setting people up in our communities for failure. So if you are a municipality, if you are a developer, start thinking of who those partners are in your community and start creating pathways and get out of your own way to allow for developments like this to happen. Hillsborough stepped up, asked for what they needed, and got this partnership.
How do you look at community housing data to understand trends and community needs when you are looking to develop specifically a single family project? Doors?
Basically, residential redevelopment for jobs. There is a need, like I to that. Smaller homes. We built them basically 1,000 square feet on the first floor, finished the basement, which is another 800 square feet. They run anywhere from 280 to 300,000. And the last house we sold, which you see on the slide, was a family with 5 children. They moved in, it was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. They just loved it.
One of the things a lot of municipalities do is they will develop land, so they might create a TID, put in infrastructure, and then they kind of just say, hey, who wants to buy these lots? And I think that's helpful, but I don't think it helps you get to what you need in your communities. And so, data doesn't lie. And Charlotte showed some really important information that is really easy to find about what are your needs for your communities. And single family attainable housing doesn't pencil out. So if you want to provide affordable homeownership opportunities for people in your community, if you turn just to your market rate developers, they're not going to build that kind of housing because they cannot make money off of it. They cannot find a price point and develop housing that people in the community who are low income can actually afford. And so you need to look at the data, and then you need to use that data to figure out what type of housing. And I think housing of all kinds, whether it's rental, whether it's single family, whether it's multi-unit, high-density homeownership. Those are all the things at your fingertips that you can take a look at, but it needs to be driven by the data, and then you need to go out and find the people that can bring you the housing you need in that community. Because if you ask the market to do it, the market cannot handle single-family affordable housing development. And so finding those partners, finding that community that can develop the housing you need has to be driven by the data. And it exists. You know, the slideshow that Charlotte is a great place to start because that's a lot of stuff that you can take a look at. And then you need to be sharing that data within your community because if you ask people what kind of housing they would like to see, they love to see the $500,000 houses in their community. And municipalities love the $500,000 houses because your taxes are higher in a $500,000 house than a $250,000 house. But that's not what your community necessarily needs. And when your businesses cannot find employees, that can have an economic impact overall on your community. So you really need to take a look at that data and use that data to develop a housing plan and then get your people together.
And we've really looked at over the last 30 years, if you look at new single family housing starts, manufactured housing consistently ranks 9 to 10% of all new housing starts throughout the United States. So no matter what's happening in housing, we're always seeing that same niche. So that's where through partnerships with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, sort of this cross-mod product has really come into effect in that we're looking to do more infill type projects, do more projects with developers, maybe builders that don't have the workforce that they used to have. So if 70% of the project shows up completed, then they can finish out the last 30% with what their crew has left, and we're still on board with them, hasn't retired. You know, the attrition rate hasn't gone through. You know, that's a real thing in the world. And then Kevin Blake, our CEO, made a conscious decision here recently when the Department of Energy was trying to put new energy standards into our industry, which is probably going to get rejected. But we just most of our competitors ran away from that, and we ran towards what we call an e-build. But what it really is it's meeting the efficiency standards that the Department of Energy has for net zero energy ready. So we've elevated the R factors in the homes. Not as much in Minnesota because we were pretty much already there, but a lot of our plants in the South had to do that. A lot more ceilings, a lot more with ductwork being closed up, using hybrid heat pump water heaters, but being physically able to prove that we can save consumers 40 to 50% on utility bills by using these building products. So that's the hidden mortgage that you guys are in the attainable housing rule. So you can do everything you want, but if you don't build a house that's going to be able to afford monthly on the utility bills, what have you really done? So we really took that a focus to make sure that the monthly grind that you're going to have making ends meet is attainable.
Yeah, I think it's really important too. Like if you took a look at like some of the stuff that we're put on our slides, like there was a lot of public and private partnerships. So the city was involved in some of the lot purchases. Gunderson, the hospital was involved. There was grants from the county. So even as a traditional developer, Dolores has to staff a lot of different funding to make these projects happen so that she can be in the affordable single-family housing realm.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to modify it a little bit because I believe you all seek out potential housing projects. So, how are you seeking out potential housing projects?
Basically, I went to the City of Cross website that sells their surplus properties, or just private people have a lot for sale. That's basically what I'm looking for a lot. We've had good luck on that road where they have an RFP out there to submit a proposal on. So it's been really good.
Yeah, see, I would say it's a constant thing, right? So when you're doing affordable housing development, every single piece of that stack is important. So, land acquisition, purchasing at market rate can sometimes just ruin a project. So finding those partnerships and working with municipalities for discounted or donated properties. One of the things that exists often is properties that exist and you have to purchase, demo, and rebuild. That's expensive. And so if you're going to do something like that, you have to find additional resources. And so literally a lot of my job and our construction director's job is running around looking at available properties. So we check auction sites, we check tax reform properties, We are on municipal websites constantly. We're responding to RFPs like the city of Hillsborough put out, but it never ends. And I can tell you a lot of times in this market, it's slowed a bit, but I would go out to houses, I would look at them, I would say this is a total demo. There is no way that we can save this home. And by the time I would get to my office, back to my office, like a 10-minute drive, there would be an accepted offer on the property. And so a lot of times it's just being on top of it constantly and paying attention to it. And then I find the houses that I put, when I'm thinking about making offers on are just recycled into rental properties in our communities. So, they're probably not really fit for human habitation, and yet they're churned back out because the market is so tight. And so, having these partnerships with municipalities and taking stock of the vacant land and the available land, and then working with partners to develop that is a really great way to kind of bridge some of those gaps in what can make or break an affordable development. So we do a lot of infill development in the city of La Crosse. So just like a awkward, weird 50 by 50 piece of land that you have to redevelop. We've done floodplain redevelopment. That's rough and very expensive. But we are really kind of shifting to this idea of larger scale affordable housing development through the use of factory built housing, because 10 homes in the city of Hillsborough can make a difference. And I love what Dolores is doing by looking at density housing as well. So twin homes as opposed to single family. And Habitat has also developed twin homes. Those are really great things, but a lot of times our zoning might preclude that from being a possibility in your community.
I would say just one thing: don't feel like you're alone, because there's nowhere in the upper Midwest that I travel to that doesn't have these same issues. From our space, we attend a lot of seminars. We try to educate a little bit on what some of the new possibilities are with manufactured housings as that product has changed over the years. But we typically get approached by either larger developers or builder developers that want to partnership up with product lines and do these infill subdivision type products. But a few fun examples: Williston, North Dakota is probably the last big city that put in an international airport. Okay, well, they put that international airport in, and they pulled the old one out. Well, they pulled the old one out. They have a huge housing need, and there are 600 to 700 available spots for housing there. We've partnered with that group. We'll be putting in our first 10 homes on kind of a trial basis here in about the next 3 months, and we'll see how that goes. There's a very good opportunity to put 300 to 400 homes in the city in Overland Park, just outside of Johnson County, just outside of Kansas City, and those are all for rent. I've seen the mayor here this morning, but last time I was talking to him, you look at Kaya's numbers and what these folks are going to be able to pay for these homes in Hillsborough really astounds me comparatively, because the same product in Overland Park, Kansas City, they're renting those homes for $3,500 a month, and there's not one. They're taken within 2 weeks of completion. So imagine these homes being done 2 to 3 or 4 weeks from now, and somebody's already in there renting for that kind of money in those markets. Greenby, Montana, 15-20 miles from where they film Yellowstone, 35 unit subdivision going up there. So there are people that kind of, I just want to say, starting to think about housing differently, because if we don't, you're going to continue to get what you got, and it isn't working. So we've got to look at affordable housing.
What are some of the current gaps or barriers to housing in your area, and what has your organization done to overcome these barriers and help the community overcome these barriers?
Trying to find land. It's not out there. The city of La Crosse is like, as soon as something comes up, it's gone. So it's really hard to build. And we basically focus on that downtown south side area of La Crosse where it's needed. And there's a lot of houses that need to be torn down. They're really little lots, just make a whole block. So we try. Can't build a city overnight.
I will say, I think the first one is running into zoning barriers. So municipalities that have more restrictive zoning that makes it harder. So, you're looking at variances and 25 committee meetings before you can get a project approved and underway. One of the prime examples is that modular housing is allowed in most municipalities, but manufactured housing is usually not. Manufactured housing is your lowest price point, and cross mods are quote unquote manufactured housing, but they're built to a really high, amazing standard, but a lot of zoning would preclude it. Setbacks, minimum parking requirements, minimum lot sizes, those can all be things that can wipe out affordable housing development in your communities. The second thing that you'll see a lot is NIMBYism. I talked about the word affordable housing in and of itself can spark people off. We hit that here in Hillsborough hard. We had a lot of people that objected to this development because it was Habitat for Humanity and it was labeled affordable housing. And so you have to understand that that could be an issue, and data and conversations and bringing your partners to talk to the community. One of the most eye-opening things that we did was we said, here is literally the income of the people at 60, 80, and 100%. Tell me somebody in your community that doesn't meet these income guidelines. These are your nurses. These are your grocery store workers. This is the lady that helps you at the restaurant you go to. This is your teachers. How could you tell them that they should not live in and invest in this community? And so, understanding that it absolutely exists, that a lot of times your NIMBYs are your loudest, and I heard this at a conference once, NIMBY told me NIMBYs, you're not going to change their mind. But the vast majority of people in the community understand it, get it, and want it. And so really understanding that and addressing it up front and having those conversations early and often is very important. And then I think, like Dolores said, land is hard to come by, but funding stacks to get affordable housing projects underway can be massive. And so if it doesn't have the infrastructure, that's very expensive. And so understanding who the players are that you can bring to the table. So rural development, community action agencies, Habitat for Humanities, other nonprofits, market rate housing developers. Are there ways that you could have, for-profit and nonprofit partnerships? We've worked with Marvin Wanders on a project in the city of La Crosse. So what are some ways that you can bring that? But it's going to take a bit. It's not easy, and your funding, your most restricted funding is going to be the one that's going to hold up projects and keep things from moving forward. So I talked to you about the solar project. That's EPA funding. We broke ground on pieces of land that have never been developed in the past. Guess what? I had to do a tier 1 environmental review on 10 lots in the city of Hillsborough. The EPA was putting out a ton of funding, so instead of taking 30 days, it took over 120 days for us to get approval to move this project forward. That was a massive halt in what we thought was our timeline. And so understanding that, understanding your funding sources, and adjusting your timeline and your expectations for that. So there's a lot of different things, but if there's a will, if there's energy behind it, it exists out there.
So zoning is the biggest thing. And just a small, quick educational piece there. When she says modular and manufactured. So the real difference is that when we build modular, we build both out of our facility. About 20% of what we build is modular construction, but the construction, there's very few differences. The differences being is who gets to say how it's built. And when we build to modular codes, that means I can build it next to anybody's home in Hillsborough. I have to build it to the same codes that the site builder built to. So I have to build them to the 2023 National Electric Code and the 2015 IRC code or whatever's applicable in that municipality. Manufactured housing is overseen by HUD. So we have the same building standards, minimum building standards that we can ship. That we can build the homes in Minnesota, but I can ship it to California if I so desire, because it meets the federal building standard. So what that really means in what we're trying to do with like this cross-mod product line, cross-mod can be manufactured housing, but it must have a 5-flow brokerage. Okay, it has to have drywall throughout. It has to have certain features. All has to have hardwood cabinets. It has to have certain features in that build to elevate it past the standard, what quote-unquote manufactured housing gets to, so that we can try to sway that needle to allow some of the zoning folks to get in there. The example with Williston, North Dakota, the mayor has been with us several times. He's on our side. The developer is totally on our side. The building inspector guy, not so much. You know, he wants it his way. So they're a big little to-do fight there for 6-7 months, and finally, developer guy, mayor guy called the governor. The governor calls in there, and like, we're going to exempt cross mod. Will be allowed in if it's cross mod spec, we're going to allow it in Williston, North Dakota. You know, get over it. And the guy's like, okay, reluctantly signs off that we'll be able to move forward. So sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, relationships, friends, those kind of things help. But the zoning piece is the biggest contributing detriment at this point.
Thank you. All right, this will be our final question, and then we'll open it up. I think we'll have time for one or two. And we started getting into this, but can you talk a little bit about how developers can get creative in collaboration, overcoming these barriers and gaps and moving forward? Do you want to kick this off?
I'm going to be quick. I'll tell you, for me, it's all about education. I mean, that's why I appreciate you folks showing up here. But I mean, I think it's all about, you just got to get in front of the folks, and it's a grassroots network of word of mouth, and you know.
So, I think Hillsborough is a prime example. You know, it's a variety of different partners and funding sources. What I really want to say is, you know, always when you're looking at doing something different or new, you always have your early adopters, you have your kind of middle folks that will come after the first few people come through and the world doesn't explode, and then you've got the people that are like, I don't think we'll ever want to do that. Hillsborough was one of the early adopters. They identified a need, and they specifically went out and asked for a solution. And so it wasn't us. Habitat did not approach Hillsborough. Hillsborough identified the need, said this is what we need to do, and they went out and they found it, and then they got out of the way. You know, they made sure that the things that needed to be kind of dismantled in order to make this project happen were taken care of. So they literally said, you know, no manufactured housing in the city of Hillsborough. They got rid of that. They allowed it. They made an exception for this development so that we could do what we needed to do. You know, they have been absolutely phenomenal in making sure that this project, besides the NIMBYs that we faced, which was outside of their control, went smoothly. They made it a very easy process for us. And so, you know, finding, you know, as a municipality, the first thing that you need to do is, you know, find those partners, but then make that process for those partners easy. And, you know, again, you know, outside of the box, what type of funding exists out there? TIF is great, and there is, you know, things that you can use TIF funding specifically for affordable housing. So do that. Think about that as something that you want to invest in. You know, talk to your folks at WIDA, talk to your folks at Rural Development, you know, talk to your nonprofit and your for-profit developers, get them to a table, start having conversations, identify the needs, and then find the resources to do it and be a true partner. You know, I think a lot of times municipalities think that, you know, developers want to come and buy their land and develop and make a ton of money, so you're the one offering some type of a gift. But a lot of times, you know, if you're not with a municipality that allows for some of these things to happen, then, you know, it is a reciprocal relationship where everybody plays a role in the overall success of a project.
We've been in business for 40 plus years. We're just a small family business. It's stick built from the ground up. We build the houses like we're going to move in. I mean, solid oak floors, custom cabinets, solid doors, solid trim. I mean, we just build them like we're going to move in them. I must say we've had good luck selling them because we're in that price range, and they're not huge, massive houses. Of course, the area we build it, they want to fit in. So.
I think another thing, like an innovative thing, is density. You know, so be thinking about, you know, it's cheaper to build a twin home than 2 standalone single-family homes. You know, so those are things that you can incorporate into some of your developments. You know, again, taking a look at your municipal code and what does that allow. You know, twin homes are great, but triplexes are better. 4 units are even better. You know, so what are some ways that you can take a look at, you know, what are some hindrances that you have, and can you take a look at higher density home ownership options, you know, with shared wall and zero lot line, qualities. And those are really great. And if you need more housing, you know, I can do a twin home faster than I can do, well, not with factory built housing, but yes, we have actually 2 twin homes that are actually coming out of the factory in the next couple months for another Habitat partner affiliate. So, and then I just wanted to mention too, so Habitat for Humanity, we are actually a licensed manufactured and modular housing dealer in the state of Wisconsin. So we actually, that's why Corey's here, we buy homes direct from the factory. So we don't buy from a dealer. And so that's kind of that middleman kind of situation. When we don't buy from a dealer, we are our own dealer, we get the direct factory pricing, and that's a huge game changer for us. And so that was an outside the box idea in order for us to take a look at not only housing that just in general on the market is a lower price point, but it's also by becoming a dealer, we reduce that price even more. So we actually buy homes for other Habitat affiliates and nonprofit developers in both the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin. So,
The relationship makes sense because we've got 60 distribution points in 13 states in the upper Midwest. So I'm just not staffed at the factory to deal with one house. So Kaya's team can work through their affiliates and focus in on that one. Work with my sales representative and get that into one of the 800 homes we'll build this year for them. But the ability, the reason the Habitat thing works so well is, anybody who's been in any kind of construction, as long as you know how to do drywall, as long as you know how to adjust the doors, and you got the ability to hire a contractor to crane the homes in on site, then we can probably work together. It's just going to have those. You got to have some specialty pieces there.
yeah.
We have time for a few questions, so we can open it up.
I was wondering what capacity for handling multiple projects in this year that feels like you have.
Yeah, I love that question. This is our first large scale development. We have done pretty much nothing but infill housing and scattered site development in so these are 5 counties. So this is our first development. It's actually, where's wood? Knock on wood, like a better, it's gone faster and smoother-ish than what we anticipated. So getting our first houses set in less than a month is we weren't expecting that. So we are actually really taking a step back and looking at getting a funding stack from at larger scale so that we can take developments like this and do it in other municipalities so that we can kind of just keep recycling this. So our goal is to be able to do this more often and at a more rapid pace at this level for rural communities that we serve.